Welcome back to another episode of the Meaningful People podcast. We're so happy that you're listening or watching. And we have a very important episode this week. Just a trigger warning. This episode is not for everybody. There's very sensitive discussions, information, stories that are discussed with our guests. So if this is not up your alley, we discuss eating disorders, suicide, and things of the like, then maybe check in next week for the next episode.
And if you're young, maybe ask one of your parents or guardians if you should be listening to this episode. But so this happened, the way we got involved in this story was about 3 months ago, maybe a little longer. So I was on Instagram and I saw a post, and I'll read the beginning of it. It said, "Hey, this is pretty surreal, isn't it? One might say uncomfortable, jarring. Just close the app now if you want. I guess if you don't know by now, you should probably sit down. If you're reading this, I'm gone. Either that or somehow incapacitated in the hospital, so I can't delete this scheduled post. I really hope I'm not, though." And this letter goes on, and it's from Yocheved Gourarie, Olav Shalom, and she lived a life of many battles, and we had the zchus of sitting down with her father to talk about Yocheved's life, her journey, her struggles, her father, and just his point on everything. And obviously, huge shout out to him for being so open about everything and really trying to help others that struggle with this, or even those that don't struggle with it, just to understand eating disorders. And there's a lot in here. Kudos to Avremi. This episode, I'm a little nervous. This is very serious, but also in the episode, it wasn't like
there were light moments.
Yeah, there were light moments. I don't think either of us cried, even though it was there's so many sad moments and stuff like that. But he carried it through. It was definitely a very flowing episode. So yeah, enjoy the rest of the episode. Welcome to the Meaningful People podcast, the podcast where we talk to people who are
meaningful.
Yeah, that sounds good. So we're here with Professor Avremi Gourarie. He jokingly told me before to call him Professor. Mr., I guess, Avremi.
Just Avremi.
Avremi. Just Avremi. Just Avremi, like no last name, like Oprah.
Avremi Gourarie.
Avremi Gourarie. Here to talk to you about a lot of stuff. Obviously, some very important and I think just a difficult type of conversation. So thank you for being here to talk to us.
You're very welcome.
But let's start with your background. You have a really cool accent, and you're involved in a very cool job, I should say.
It's not a Brooklyn accent.
It's not a Brooklyn accent. It's a Dutchess accent. Because Nachy and I come from Dutchess. Grandparents.
This is my grandfather over here.
But no, I was born and grew up in South Africa. I was born in Cape Town. Grew up in Johannesburg. So if there's an accent that you detect, it's South African. But for those of you that know any South Africans, I've probably lost most of my accent by now. I've been here a long time.
I still sense it a little.
Do you miss it? Do you miss...
Not in the slightest bit.
Really? Why not? It's home, no?
It's home, but that was then and this is now, and I have no desire to... except for the fact that my mother lives there.
Okay.
Still lives there, and I have a few friends there, but otherwise... No, I'm fine with being here and hopefully visiting Israel as many times as I can, and that's it.
So the profession that you're involved in,
right.
I'm not even exactly sure what exactly you do. I just know
right.
you're super involved in the music industry.
Right, that's correct.
So what exactly do you do for the music side?
So I started out as a performing musician, playing weddings and leading bands at weddings, and that moved into music notation, where I would provide written sheet music for band leaders and musicians. And from there, it went into arranging, writing orchestrations, writing arrangements for singers, for live events, for recordings. And that's pretty much what I do today.
Do you see, I always think like mathematicians see math in the air. I'm so not musically talented? Like, do you see or like hear or think like differently?
Yeah, so when people talk to him, he thinks of it in tones
like
of
right now I'm
song.
singing to him like, hey, how are you doing?
So I think in terms of music,
Yeah.
Like if my voice right now, that's a B minor voice.
yeah. No,
I hope not, 'cause that would be really confusing.
not really actually. Not really. If I'm working on a musical project, then I do. If I'm not, then I'm just going about my daily business. I don't. We talk about music a lot at home. It's a passion of the whole family. But other than that,
Is it a family of musicians?
it's a family of folks that love and appreciate and are passionate about music. My two sons are definitely, my daughter Alva Shalom is definitely into music, very much so. And my wife, she came along for the ride, and she got introduced to a lot of music that she wouldn't have gotten introduced to otherwise.
So I to take like I guess a serious note, this is definitely the first type of conversation like this that we're having, and I'll talk about how Nachi and I got into this, introduced into this conversation, and you'll, I guess, if you could take us through your journey. So
Sure.
I was on Instagram. I'm not sure what day. It was like around 2 months ago, maybe 3 months ago.
Close to 3 months ago.
Close to 3 months ago, and I saw a post on Instagram, and it was very jarring, and I'm like, whoa, it definitely shook me up, very much so, and I never met you, I never met your daughter, and could you tell us a little about just your journey and a little more context into that?
Okay. So you're referring to the Instagram post that was posted on December either 22nd. She passed on December 22nd. It was a delayed post. To this day, I don't even know how to do a delayed post.
She's actually the one who posted it.
Yeah. It was her post. I think it was delayed. We know that. Whether it came out later that day or the next day, I'm not exactly sure. And she basically wrote a mini suicide note, if you will. It was a beautiful note. It was a positive note in many ways. She wasn't laying blame at anyone. In fact, she thanked a lot of people. And that was the day that she took her life, on December 22nd. And I guess that's how you discovered it. You asked me to talk about the story a little bit. We can go back many, many years.
Yeah, sure. Take us back.
It was clear, it became evident in I would say when she was in 7th or 8th grade. 7th or 8th grade, that she had an eating disorder. Let me help you out of that. You're getting a message.
He's the music guy.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Nachi.
We good now?
I'm like, I don't want to stop this. This is like,
My
but of course, the music
my
guy
OCD,
is like
I'm sorry.
helping us. Okay, sorry.
So it became clear that in about 7th or 8th grade that she was struggling with food. We didn't even know then what an eating disorder is or was. To this day, I don't fully understand it. She got some treatment. She got, she saw a doctor that specialized in eating disorders. This went on for maybe a year or so, and then she switched schools. She actually went to school in the Five Towns at Midrash Yocheved, which has since closed down because of COVID. For high school, for elementary school, she was in Chabad in Crown Heights, and then she went to school in the Five Towns. And in her senior year in high school, one of her friends, who she was very close with, realized that there's a serious problem over here, and she said, "You got to talk to the school psychologist." And she did, and the school psychologist called us, of course, and said, "You have a serious problem here. You have a daughter who has," and we kind of knew it, but we didn't. I'm not sure we knew to what extent, the seriousness of it was. But she had an eating disorder, and a full-blown, at this point, a full-blown eating disorder. In her case, anorexia, restricting. And we restarted, going to see a doctor at Long Island Jewish. I think it was on North Shore, perhaps. I'm not sure. But also here and there on the island for eating disorders. She saw this doctor a few times, and then after about the third or fourth visit, I believe, my wife calls me up and said, been a little hiccup. We're not coming home. We're going to hospital. I said, why are you going to hospital? And she said, Yocheved is self-harming. We now know that she's self-harming. I said, what's self-harming? And she said that she's been cutting herself. Now, at that point, I'd never heard of this concept of someone cutting themselves. What we know now to be mostly prevalent amongst women or young girls, which is a serious psychiatric disorder, and she has to go to hospital. She has to be admitted to a psychiatric hospital, and this started that journey.
Were you at that point at any point in denial? Like, no, this can't be, or
in denial? I was never in denial, but I will admit that I never understood what she was going through fully, and I didn't appreciate how deeply systemic it was, and how deeply, how deep the disease was, and how terrible it was. It was a multi-year education of getting educated about it, and she educated me. She was highly intelligent, and in later years she went to college. She had a degree in psychology, so she would, teach me, and I would accept some of it. Much of it I would not accept. We would have these strong disagreements. I would use the word psychobabble, and she'd get very upset at that, of course. But it's a disorder that's vastly misunderstood. Highest mortality rate, I believe, of any mental disorder, arguably. So she went to hospital, and in Westchester, Cornell Westchester, which is a psychiatric institution. She was in the eating disorder unit. Now, at that time, it was believed, and we now know that it's not the case, that her main disease was eating disorder. Now, we know now that in some cases that can be the case, but in some cases that's actually a symptom of something deeper. I think we know now that that is exactly what it is, a symptom of her depression and anxiety. But she was treated for eating disorder. From there, she was released into something called PHP. When they get released from hospital for any kind of mental disease, the hospitals like to see them released into a step-down program. So PHP is called partial hospitalization program. She went to a program called Renfrew Manhattan, where it's a day program. She goes in the morning, comes back at night. They do their meals, they do their meal planning. And that she was there for about 2 months. She ended up missing, as a result, 2.5 months of high school, of a senior year. She was valedictorian, and actually called her Mary Friedman and told him, look, she's missed 2.5 months, and to this day I'm so appreciative of how they made special arrangements that she can take her examinations independently of her class, and he insisted that she'll still be valedictorian. And she was, so, to this day, I'm really appreciative of Rabbi Friedman, who you probably knows the Shiva of Rambam as well.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, she was going to go to college. She was accepted into this program called the Macaulay program, Macaulay Honors College, which is part of the CUNY system, but it's an honors program. And if you get in, it's free. It's a free ride. She got accepted. She applied to Stern, and she applied to Macaulay. She got accepted to Macaulay, and that's the program she chose. On the way to college, she and I were discussing, maybe on the way to registering for college, maybe you should take a year off. You're struggling. You worked so hard in college, in high school, until we got to the registration. Finally she decided, you're right, I'm going to take a year off, and they allowed her to defer for a year, and in that year she took it easy. She had a part-time job, and I don't remember much from that year. I will assume that her eating disorder was in full bloom, but it's the nature of the disorder that it's a very secretive disorder, so that the patient will keep it to as much as possible secretive from those around them, their loved ones and so on. And then a year later, she went to college at Macaulay in Brooklyn. And by her own admission, and she writes about this, that her disorder was quieted during her college years. Perhaps because she was so busy with college. Not exactly sure. In college, she did very, very well. She graduated summa cum laude with a degree in psychology. She had a 4.0 GPA. Again, the discussion after college was, okay, what now? She wanted to go to nursing school. There was talk of her going to nursing school 10 days out of college. And we talked about that and said, again, same conversation. You worked so hard during high school. Take some time off. So she did. She took some time off and, doing art things. I think she took a year or 2 years off, actually, until she eventually decided that she wanted to apply to a graduate nursing school program. We found out after her passing that she got accepted to a PhD program at Columbia with scholarship. But at that point, this is after she had passed. We can go. Yeah, go ahead.
Where was she religiously at that point?
So religiously, she was always, I would say, left of center. When I say center, I mean mainstream Chabad, meaning not extreme Chabad, but Avremi, which is a regular Lubavitcher family. She went to a very, very frum, very right-wing elementary school. And because it was obvious that her leanings in terms of frumkeit were not rebellious. I wouldn't say rebellious because she never had a rebellious bone in her body, or she was never angry in terms of religion. But it was obvious she needed something a little bit more lenient, and also at the same time academically motivating. Which this is the reason we chose Shall Have It in the Five Towns, even though it's quite a job. Get her to school every day. It's an hour drive. Bus. This and that and the other. She did very well in Shall Have It, like I said. And when we talk about music, that was the day, because in her elementary school years, my philosophy was always, follow the rules of the school. And the school that she went to did not allow her or students to listen to non-Jewish music. And it's not something we thought about. We just understood that is the case. And on her graduating day, I gave her a hard drive of all the music that I loved. And I said, here's your music education. Go for it. And she went for it, and then some. She devoured music, until the day she died. And she loved music. She introduced me to music that I'd never heard. And we listened to a lot of music. We watched a lot of music videos together. So she was passionate about music. And I don't remember the question that you asked. So did that answer the question?
You answered. I was asking religiously.
Can you, I guess, maybe for listeners who don't really know so much about, let's say, an eating disorder,
right?
It can seem on the surface something so straightforward, but I'm sure there are many different doors that it leads to that are it's complicated. If you could just delve into it. I know you're not necessarily a professional, but you have this experience.
I'm not a professional, and there's much about it that I don't understand. All I will say is that people have to understand that it's not a physical disease. It's a mental disorder. And for those families that have children that are developing eating disorders, don't for a second think that it's a physical disease. It's a mental disease, and can be brought about by confluence of many, many factors, many of which I don't understand to this day. Why it actually started, the genesis of it, in her case, or in anybody's case. Could it be trauma? Could it be exposure to social media and the desire to look a certain way? Could it be depression, anxiety? It could be a variety of factors. You're going to have to ask a professional about that. It's a very serious disease. Like I said before, I think it has one of the highest mortality rates of any mental disease amongst young women. So it should be taken very seriously. And perhaps that's one of my regrets that we didn't notice that. And, like a therapist I spoke to, he said, he said to me, build me a rocket ship. And I said, I don't know, I can't build you a rocket ship. And he said, why? I said, I don't know how. He says, just the same thing. When you're parenting, you're learning as you go along. And we were presented with a scenario that most parents, Baruch Hashem, are not presented with, and we learned along the way. But knowing what I know now, it's something that to be taken extremely seriously. And if you can nip it in the bud, I don't even know what it means to nip it in the bud. And
right.
when you talk about an eating disorder, in my case, and I think in most cases, I understand it's very secretive. There's an app called Telonym.
What?
There's an app called Telonym TELLONYM, where you get to ask questions anonymously, and you can answer them if you wish. And one of the questions she was asked was, "Are you an honest person?" And she said, "Yes, I'm an honest person, except within the confines of my eating disorder." So, and that's just it's not something that I'm angry at her about. It's just it's the nature of the disease that they're very secretive and very manipulative, and they want to have control over their eating and their eating disorder, and nothing's going to get in their way. Some, and like in her case, realized that it's a problem, and she wanted to heal. She really did want to heal, I believe. She had that desire. But in the end, she tried, and she couldn't. And she advised others. She actually helped. This is the thing. She used to help a lot of other people. She would advise others. She'd always say that I'm not a therapist, I'm not a professional, but, let me help you. This is what I know about it. This is what's, this is a truism. This is a falsehood. She helped some people get into treatment. But in the end, the disease won.
Are there any, I know obviously we're here talking about you and your experience and your story and your daughter's story, but is there, let's say, any early signs maybe a parent, if let's say a parent is suspicious or they're skeptical, they're not sure about a child of theirs, is there any early signs that you would tell them, if you see this and this and this, maybe look deeper into it?
Yeah, I told them to go to seek professional help immediately. I can't give that advice. I'm not a professional.
Right.
But I do know, you should be really aware of any kind of odd behaviors, let's say. So it's not only appearance. Oh, you're looking very skinny, or you look severely underweight. You must have an eating disorder. But there are odd behaviors that accompany it, such as self-harm, which is what in our case, which we didn't know about. Weird ways of eating, like nibbling at food or eating it and spitting it out. We would discover chewed pieces of cookies in her bedroom, and if you notice that, you have a problem on your hands. And others, and again, I'd refer you to speak to those that are really expert on these matters. I can just only speak of our experiences.
Something I heard you say is that it's important, and I think it's a very important lesson, that you have to put health before religion.
Yeah.
Which is something that, sometimes I think when we're in religion, and we obviously religion is our life, it's very easy to sometimes forget that we need health in order to do religion.
That's exactly correct. And I think this is if anything can come out of this little talk, I think this is something that the frum world has to come to terms with. If unfortunately you have a child who's suffering from some kind of mental disease, not to let religion play any kind of role that is a barrier to cure. And I think just speak to a Rav, and I think any Rav is worth their salt will tell you that. And I can tell you two stories that connects to that, if you want. In October of 2019, I'm sure you must have seen me write about this. In October of 2019, she and I went to the Halloween parade in Greenwich Village. It's really not a place for a Jewish boy or a Jewish girl, but we loved the.
People thought this was the Halloween costume with the beard.
No, you're right. No, we loved it. We just loved the music and the drama and the costumes and everything about it. And I noticed that at this point she's 22, 23 years old, I believe. I noticed that, and we knew she was struggling, right? But I noticed that she was wearing pants, jean pants underneath a skirt. I understand she was extremely obedient, not rebellious, not angry, and wanted to please us, her family, her parents. And I thought to myself, this is just bizarre. She's an adult. If she, it's obvious that she wants to wear pants. Obviously, Chabad families, that's not the thing. And she should be allowed to wear pants, And I told my wife, about this and my thoughts, and she said, let's consult with those that are close to us who might be more in the know. And we spoke to my brother, who's a Rav in Sydney, Australia. We spoke to my brother-in-law, who's an Askan, or a well-known figure in Canada, Shimon Fogel, and they both told us, of course, why not? My brother-in-law in Canada actually told me, well, I actually, to tell you the truth, I don't even know why that didn't actually apply to, to be honest with you. And he's a very frum guy, and but he's very open-minded and forward-thinking, but the reality is that's how we follow. But of course, and we were going to tell her that we're going to tell her to do that. So it's not like she came to us and said, Dad, can we? I think I want to start wearing pants. In the interim, what had happened, she then had her first suicide attempt in November, a few weeks later, actually. And so we didn't get that opportunity to have that discussion, but in hospital, we would visit her every single day. One day, I came to her and I said, remember that time we went out and you were wearing pants underneath the skirt? I think I'm encouraging you to start wearing pants, and you could visibly see the burden being lifted off her shoulder. And it's not a point that she wanted to be not frum, but anything that could help her be comfortable in her own skin and own body was important. And she went with it. As soon as she was released from hospital, and I told her, Crown Heights is a frum community. I'll walk down the main street, Kingston Avenue. If anybody gives you any problems, I'll defend you. Family, friends. Of course, we spoke about respect. You go to a family event, you go to a community event, you dress appropriately, which she was a totally respectful person, and that's exactly what she did. And she bought this new wardrobe, and we just got love and compassion and respect from everyone in the community and our extended family. So there are a lot of things that I'm not proud of, but this is one of those things that I am proud of, that we gave her that year, a little over a year, to where she could dress in a way that she wanted to, and more importantly, feel just a little bit more comfortable in the body that she was so uncomfortable in.
It's really beautiful. You said there's two stories.
The second story is that that moving forward, when she was admitted to a eating disorder residential facility, so of course, when it became clear, she was seeing a nutritionist that specialized in eating disorders, and the nutritionist told us, she needs a high level of care, and she needs to go to a residential facility that specializes in eating disorders. Of course, the first thing that comes to my mind is, okay, she needs to go to a place where they serve kosher food, right? Keep Shabbos, Yontif. She ended up being at this place for the entire Tishrei. So actually, I think there's one or two facilities, the one that I know of in America that is kosher. Then I was speaking to a friend of mine. I can mention his name because he was so helpful. His name is Rabbi Benny Zippel, is shliach in Utah. Utah is a state that has a lot of residential facilities for mental health, addiction, drug addiction, suicidality, depression, eating disorders. And I told him this when I was on my mind, and he said, Avremi, you're crazy. Talk to her of. Forget about the kosher component. Just find the best place for her, and work out the kosher stuff later. If at all you can work it out, And I did speak to my brother about it, and everyone agreed. And Kachav, that's exactly what happened. She ended up in Center for Change in Orem, Utah, which is not a kosher facility. They bought her kosher meat, and they agreed not to serve her meat and milk together. But the fact remains that it was not cooked in a kosher kitchen. And to the extent possible, she ate kosher food in that kind of way, but it obviously wasn't kosher because it was cooked in a non-kosher kitchen. And that's it, and that's the lesson to be learned. We tried our hardest, and we didn't put religion ahead of care.
You're dealing with you're literally dealing with sakana nefashos over here.
That's exactly the reason. That's exactly the point.
Right.
That obviously if someone's okay, of course religion's first, but like you're saying, it's
Pekuach nefesh.
It's literally pekuach nefesh, and why wait to get to that point of?
So you bring up a very good point, because we wouldn't think twice when it comes to if someone has had a heart attack and
They're a physical
thing,
yeah.
and of course Hatzalah comes on Shabbos and everything is done. Phones come out, and we don't even think about it. Mental disease should take the same place, and it should take this. In terms of halachically, it's like
I think we've seen, especially during the COVID pandemic, or is whatever we refer to it, but Rabbanim, organization like Amudim, on Pesach there was a 24-hour hotline that Rabbanim, encouraged people if they felt the need to call. I think as a culture, as a society, in the firm world, I think we are making strides in that area. I would hope. Would such a thing be said 5 years ago? I don't know. Do you find
in terms of halacha or in terms of acceptance of the?
I mean,
halacha is halacha. I mean,
acceptance. I guess. I mean,
you're talking about two different things now. You're talking about acceptance of the prevalence of mental disease, or halacha of breaking Shabbos or kashrus for. I think halacha is halacha. If you would have asked a Rav the question 50 years ago, I think you would have gotten the same answer. I mean, Torah is Torah and it never changes. In terms of the taboo or the stigma of mental disease, I tell everyone that to me, I don't understand that, because to me it's never been an issue. And we conflate the two issues. When parents don't talk about it, it doesn't mean that there's a stigma. It means perhaps that they're protecting the privacy of their children who are young, and their children don't want it to be spoken of, so they don't speak about it. And we didn't speak about it until one day my daughter came out with her entire story. When my wife says to me, check out her Instagram page, and she had fully come out of the story. And then we started being, okay, now we can talk about it. It's open. And we were proud of her for that.
Right.
We didn't ask her to go public with it. So in that sense, just because we didn't speak about it before that, it had nothing to do with stigma or taboo.
Right. Do you feel an achrayus now to speak about it, to, I guess, educate, tell people about your journey? Maybe they can learn something from what you went through.
I'm not sure I feel an achrayus. I feel that for some reason, what I've been doing has been helpful. I've been writing a lot. And if I could spread, and if anything good can come out of it, I'm just thrilled. I know that she would want me to do that, that people are getting helped. People call me up with their most intimate problems, and I ask them, why are you calling me? I'm not a professional, number one. Number two, why you trust me with your story? I mean, these are very, serious stories. And of course, I always try to steer them in the direction of professional help or rabbinical help. And it just seems that people are able to relate to me for something that I've gone through, and for that alone, I've gotten to meet a lot of people who are struggling, and from community, there are a lot of people struggling. Those that we know about, those that we don't know about. Of course, we can ask the question, why are so many people struggling today versus 20 years ago? Is it that they're...
Well, are they? Is that the case?
I think so. Some will argue that...
social media just,
before we talk about social media, some will argue, well, the prevalence of mental disease was present. 50 years ago, but we didn't speak about it. We pushed it underneath the carpet.
Meaning someone had a mental illness in California, someone in New York didn't know about it, but now it's all open, it's all out there. So
no, he's saying even before that.
I'm talking about something before. I'm talking about the fact
people
that
just didn't talk about it.
Right. No, my question
He's saying maybe.
Is it more now than it is then, or is just more ways of expressing it?
I think it is more now.
Okay.
I spoke to a professional who told me that the prevalence of suicide amongst young women is up by 60% since 2008. I think she told me.
Wow, that's a crazy number.
That's a crazy number.
What's with that?
Yeah, what's with that exactly? So we can try to analyze that. We're none of us are professionals. So.
I happen to be a professional, but
Wait, are you professional?
No. That was a joke. That was a joke.
Professional.
I thought it was very obvious. I'm super not professional at all.
Right.
I'm not professional.
So what the reasons are, I mean, we can speculate, but the fact remains that every second kid is on some kind of medication. Every third kid sees a therapist. Everyone's being diagnosed with some kind of disease from a very young age, ADHD, ADD, all these kinds of, everyone's in Ritalin. So I don't know what's happened. I think we've gone backwards, if anything. It's like we have this mental health profession that's, they profess to have made these amazing strides, and yet mental disease is blooming. It's just rampant, and there's a fire raging. So why is that? We can talk about that.
We'll be right back to this episode of the Meaningful People podcast, but we're going to give a real quick shout out to our friends at AMR Pharmacy, guys.
You always say our friends.
They're our best friends.
Are
actually.
they really our friends?
Yeah, Mili and Shiggy.
Shiggy, yeah, nice.
My best friends. Shiggy, I love you. AMR Pharmacy, guys. Pesach is behind us, and you walk out of Pesach, and 3-day yontif with family, a lot of matzah.
It was one of those Yom Tovim that I think a lot of people realize how much they love and need AMR. I'm not kidding. All the people listening, I know you're all in Orlando, and you're there, and what's one of the worst feelings that everyone has whenever they go anywhere
is I didn't bring my
something, exactly. And no one ever wants it to be medications or just anything that they need to get them by Yontif. And
guess what? the families who are with AMR, they didn't have that issue because as they're getting ready and packing
Well, if they
for
forgot it. They forgot it.
Yeah, but as they're getting ready and packing for their flight, AMR said, "Hey, we're going to send you this so you don't run out on your vacation because we know you're going."
Countless stories of people like, day before, I didn't fill it. Don't worry, we got you. Because they're not some company that, okay, you're just another number here. You're really part of their company, their family.
And they aim to please.
And they
aim
take
to
care
please.
of you.
So that's another reason. They aim to please.
Please.
That's another reason to give them a call at 848-222-1110. That's 848-222-1110. Tell
Do they
them
have a website?
I heard about you on the Meaningful People podcast. And of course, if you're more of, the tech savvy gen, you can go on their website, that box at the top of your computer, just type it in, www.amrpharm.com. Check them out.
I thought you were going to do like HTTPS.
No, I'm not that old school. But guys, check them out. And back to this episode.
I mean, I guess you're talking about it with social media. It kind of feels like that with technology. Like we're at a point where we have the most technology ever. And my friend told me this great call. We're also the busiest generation ever. Like we have advancements, but also just emotionally and just how we go through life. Life has just in certain ways become so much harder for.
Why?
Yeah, that's a good question. Why?
Why has it become harder?
I think it's I don't know if we're able to like handle so much of it. There's so much being connected to so many people, and
are we truly connected? I would think just the opposite.
Okay, fine.
Are we connected?
Artificially connected, and not fully.
Connected.
And
maybe it's
we're tapped into our phone. It's a theme that always
why are
comes
things
up.
harder today? I think we're living in a very affluent society. We have access to so much, and opportunities are there, and kids can go to college.
Well, let me ask you: Would you rather
60%
raise a child in the time that you grew up, or in today's day?
You're correct. Things are more difficult today, but what's the reason? Are things truly difficult, or are we creating difficulties for ourselves? It's like
what's the nafkamina?
During nafkamina is like during the war years, we had something to pin our problems on. Now we have no problems. We're living in a society that supports religion. Gives us religious freedom. You can do whatever you want. You can be whatever you want. The opportunities are there. So we have nothing to pin our problems on.
It's not physical danger, but it's more of it's more mental. It's more mental challenges.
So what is the?
So there's two questions.
What is the catalyst? Right?
Did mental challenges exist then? Meaning there were physical dangers then, but did mental challenges also exist? I'm sure to some extent they did.
Of course.
But now we're seeing we're not in physical danger now, but you just said 60% suicide rate gone since 2008. That's just insane.
So from your experience, what would you say is the catalyst?
I think I think it's going to be proven, and people are already talking about it, but in years from now, it's going to be even more understood that the prevalence of not so much social media, but electronic usage is toxic. And what happens is that we're not developing interpersonal relationships the way we could have years ago. We're not involving ourselves in physical activities. When I'm talking about us, we're talking about young kids, 5, 6-year-olds. The parents, Game Boy, watch a movie, go on social media. That's a good babysitter. But it's not a natural way of growing up. And then when kids get older and they have access to the internet, that can be toxic and dangerous. Before internet was a thing, it was proven that movies that have violence in them, can cause mental disease and encourage the kids to commit crimes and so on.
It's like ideation, right? It gives people
ideation. That's
we've seen that with, I guess, with terrorists, both domestic and abroad, who were inspired by acts that they've seen or played in video games. So we know that it does exist.
So there's a psychotherapist in England who interviewed me for a documentary. His name's Dr. Raj Persaud. And he said to me, he uses the word dismiss. He said that teenagers and young adults don't have the ability to expose themselves to the internet and to accept that which is good and dismiss that which is bad. Whereas when you get to adults at 25 and older, we're able to do that. And kids are not able to do that. So they're very, very impressionable.
Like a sponge, yeah.
What's that?
Like a sponge.
Like a sponge. And unfortunately, they absorb. Now, again, I'm not blaming anyone, anything. I can't, because what's the point of doing that? There's no utility. But if we're talking in broader sense, and with society as a whole, that plays a large part. Another thing that plays a large part is academic competition. Because of the opportunities that we have, we let our kids, and we're proud of our kids for driving themselves academically nuts and not allowing them to be children, And we were very proud of Yocheved, that she excelled in school, and in high school she took AP courses and got perfect scores in all the 4 AP courses that she took, and in college, and perhaps it would have been a better idea to just kind of take a step back and live life and enjoy it. And we spoke about that very, very often. But she loved academics, and she loved studying, she loved learning, and perhaps what for her was a diversion as well, from a eating disorder.
On the flip side of this conversation with social media, I happen to think the way you use it now is I think maybe the reason why Hashem made social media. It's of your voice and your experience and your sharing, and it's memories, it's history, it's stories. Could you tell us, like, for people who aren't following you yet on Instagram or Facebook, how you use social media?
Well, till this happened, I was using social media for my music. I think since this has happened, I think I've have about 2 or 3 music posts. That's it. But right after that, I started writing about my experience and about my daughter and about what had happened and my thoughts. And organically, just people started reaching out. Friends, current friends that I knew 15, 20, 30 years ago, strangers. Long messages, saying that by writing, I'm helping them. Thanks for being so open. Thanks for being so honest. And I actually fed off that. It was, for me, it gave me much chizuk. So I continued doing it. I still do it to this day. And you're right. Perhaps that's the good side of social media. But I am older, so we cannot compare, my exposure to the internet to that of a 15-year-old. But it's been a very positive ride for me. And it doesn't work for everybody. Those in my family don't want to express themselves on the internet. That's fine. But for me, it's really worked. And I reacted in a way, and am reacting in a way that I never thought I would, had this day come. And I thought I'd be just this, depressed guy, just, curl up in a ball, go to sleep every day. But, and it hasn't happened really. I mean, I've had my bad days, my sad days and angry days and so on, and guilt-ridden days. But for the most part, and I think social media has helped, I've had this interaction with so many people, hundreds of thousands of people. Thanks to Yocheved, I adopted about 3,000 more followers on Instagram in like 2 days. So that's been an amazing experience for me. Really, it's been as much as I'm helping people, they've helped me. So
right. I obviously want to get back to, I guess you had mentioned, you hear about Yocheved's first suicide attempt,
right?
And I can imagine that like probably shook you up. If you could just take us through the emotions of that moment, and then I guess what was to follow.
Okay. So first suicide attempt, my feeling, when it happened that morning, my wife came in and said, what my daughter had attempted to do. I felt, tremendously sad for her. And I just wanted to help her. I didn't have any, but the emotion was a very sad one. And the reason I'm saying that is because the second one that was a year later, and she had tried the same method. And again, when my wife came in and told me what had happened, then I felt anger. It was a totally different emotion. The reason for that was that since the first suicide attempt, we threw the book at her in terms of getting all the financial support we can to get her therapy and all the help that she can get in the psychiatry and the psychology and the best therapists and residential facilities and so on. Put in all this work, and we thought we were doing well. And then she went to a residential facility. She came back and she was like happy and doing well. And then another attempt, and I was like, I remember taking the empty bottle and just slamming it down on the floor. And I was angry, not at her.
Yeah, who you angry at?
I was just angry. Angry at like we tried. How could they have missed? They missed this. How could have? She was in contact with 15, 20 professionals during that year. How could this have been missed? And yet they did.
Do you make anything of the fact that the second attempt was the same way as the first attempt? I mean, you'd probably imagine if someone attempted once and it was unsuccessful, you'd maybe switch up your method. Was that a way of saying that maybe she didn't want it to be successful? Or
she wanted to be successful because the second one, it was worse. It was worse. It was a worse attempt. And interestingly, after the first attempt, she was a basket case in hospital. After the second attempt, she was not. She was in a great mood 2 hours later. And she said, "Dad, let's go home." I said, "Wait a second. You can't go home.
Right.
Your liver is completely messed up. First you got to get physically stabilized. And of course, you have no choice. They're sending you to a psychiatric facility from here." But in a whole stay, both in Cornell, Manhattan, and Cornell, Westchester, she was in great spirits. And we thought she was doing well. And that's another lesson to be learned, that she was doing well. And because she was doing well, they released her to a step-down program, and she was doing well ever since. And lesson from that is that that sometimes that's misleading. If someone who's depressed is doing well, or the eating disorder is doing well, maintaining, because one of the things we were worried about, she had come back from Utah having been refed and maintaining certain weight goals, and even after her second attempt in hospital, she was still maintaining her goals, which was very, very strange, because I feared that all those gains that were made in Utah would be lost. But the lesson is that sometimes I just give up and I say, okay, I know what I'm going to do in 2 months from now.
Sometimes the gains are artificial.
I know what I'm going to do. I have a plan. So whatever, I'll let go. So I'll look this way, or I'll be happy. Let me enjoy myself. The day before, she went out to the mall with my wife and one of my sons. She had the most unbelievable day. That night, I'm talking about the final attempt. That night she went to L'chaim. We went home and watched some music videos together. Next morning she made me breakfast. So, we blindsided, completely blindsided. We did not see it coming. And that's a lesson to be learned. Sometimes don't be so like, oh, she's doing well. This is great. Dig deeper. Ask the questions. Hope for the best and expect the worst.
Could you walk us through her last day?
Well, like I said, the day before, which was a Monday, she had an unbelievable day. They went on a trip together to New Jersey. Like I said, I was not on that trip. Unfortunately, I had to stay home to wait for a Dell technician to fix my computer.
Dell.
Right? Who never showed up that day, actually.
Okay.
And then we had a great day. And the next morning,
Hope you left a little Yelp review.
Yeah, exactly right. Now, part of the plan being released from hospital after a second attempt was, there was a safety plan in place, which she agreed to, we agreed to. Part of that plan was things like 24-hour supervision. She didn't have any access to her own money, so she couldn't buy tools or medicine, over-the-counter medicine, to do herself any harm. Things like that. She found a way through all of this. She found a way to spend money. She was duplicitous about this. And then she was volunteering at a JLI, which is an educational arm of Chabad, which is really around the corner from my house. And we thought that we had it under control. And that morning, I woke up early. I remember I was working on an arrangement, and I said, "Yocheved, would you be able to make me breakfast?" She did gladly. I said, "Have a great day. I love you." And my wife walked her to her job, and had expected to pick her up 2 hours later. And then about an hour later, I got a call, and she told her coworker, "I'm just going home for a few minutes. I'll be back soon." And she never came back.
Where were you when you found out?
Like I said, I was working on my music, and I'd work in the basement, and I'd gone upstairs to get a snack, and I got the call from Manhattan. The cops called me, and at first I thought it was a prank call, but it took me about 30 seconds to realize it's serious. And I kind of knew in the pit of my stomach that it's over. So that's where I was. And
were you completely blind, like not expecting it at all, or?
In a way, we weren't expecting it because she was doing well and she was being happy. We did some very happy things in the weeks prior to that. If you look at Instagram, for example, she and I recorded 2 songs together, I think 8 days or 9 days before this event, and we were very happy. And she asked, I think she was giving me a gift maybe. She asked if she could post it on. My wife just took taking amateur video on her iPhone. So she was doing well. So in a way we were blindsided, but in a way, like I must say that after her second attempt, which we were completely blindsided by, my wife and I said to each other, we said, maybe we should just come to terms with the fact that we're going to do all we can to prevent it, but this just may happen one day, And when we got that call, and they didn't tell us, they were smart enough not to tell us exactly, what the end was, which was at that point it had ended. But we kind of knew that, this is it.
I take it from, I guess, reading your posts, reading some of your daughter's stuff, that something about it that I found unique is that she wasn't angry. She wasn't upset at anybody. She had a great relationship with her parents, her family, and even after in that delayed post, she didn't set blame on anybody. I guess it just comes to show how this disorder, this illness, this disease, how little control one who's suffering from it has.
Correct. So I want to just make a disclaimer, and I've written about this on Instagram and Facebook, that I was not the perfect father. I'm not sure any father can be the perfect father, but we did have a great relationship, and she had a great relationship with her family, and she was not angry. It was not the situation where she was battling with her parents or battling with her family, and as it is, in many cases they have to leave the home. That was not the case, and you're right. She wrote to us how much she loved us, and she knew the pain that it would inflict upon us, and the disorder or the depression just kind of took over. You're absolutely correct about that.
Is there any ounce of you, as hard as this is, and I can't even imagine, is there any ounce of you that you're just happy that she's not suffering through this anymore?
I think that's a non-Jewish concept, not suffering anymore.
Meaning the pain that she was living with.
She said so. She said we should be happy that she's not suffering anymore. I'm not even sure that's a Jewish concept, and I haven't thought about it much. I mean, we believe that the neshama still exists.
Mm-hmm.
Is she physically suffering? Obviously not. Am I happy that she's not physically suffering? No, because we'd rather her physically suffer on this earth, and there'd be hope that we could somehow get closer to a cure, work towards a refuah. So I don't ascribe to that notion of I'm happy that she's not suffering anymore. I think that's a very secular attitude, which I can't come to terms with. I understand it.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, if someone's ended their suffering by doing this heinous act, then obviously they're not suffering anymore physically. Happy that she's not suffering. Can you give me a source in Gemara like that, and source in Chassidus? I've never heard about that.
What advice would you give to families that are around, whether it's a child or a parent or someone who's suffering with mental illness, as like what they could do to help? Or maybe from your experience, you could think back and say, oh, well, that family, they always did this for us. They always did, or whatever it was, whether it's accepting, whether it's actually
meaning
helping.
Friends of you guys, or family friends. Was it giving their space to you? Was it?
Every family is different, right? Sometimes a family wants their space. Sometimes, they need that support.
Maybe what not to do.
What not to do is to pry,
In any situation.
Just let the person, if they want to talk about it, then talk about it. But not to pry, and, say, I'm here for you. And if anything, just call us up and we'll be there for you. And that's where it was in our case, especially after our first suicide attempt. I mean, people came forth without me having to ask, and really came, the financial burden. I could not have done this myself, just purely financially. I mean, we spent, I don't know, $30,000-$40,000 in the last year to get her the help she needed, and that all came through Yidden, just giving. Was that the question?
Yeah, that was a question.
Yeah.
I have an interesting question. So we typically ask our guests what their favorite mitzvah is, but I want to ask you what you think Yocheved's favorite mitzvah was.
Helping people.
Helping people. You said that like before you even finished. Like that was a very...
Am I right? She loved to help people. She loved people. She loved people. She loved family. She loved dogs. She just loved being around... sometimes it was a trigger. In other words, sometimes she couldn't handle large crowds, like Friday night meals, which when we always had large crowds. And we always asked her, if you don't want a large crowd, no. But she knew that it was a problem, that, that it's a disordered way of thinking, that, she always, she wanted it. I wouldn't have done it had she not wanted it. But sometimes crowds were a problem for her. But she loved people. She loved her cousins. She loved babies, loved giving. And she loved good people. You're not going to find one person that has any bad thing to say about her. She just loved being a friend. She befriended those that others would not befriend. We're working on a project now that's going to award teachers and friends, who you can write about many years before that, because of that teacher, because of that friend, I am who I am today. So she was a very kind person, and giving person. And very special, edel, pure neshama.
This is, you could feel free not to answer this.
Uh-oh.
If
Best way to lead with a question.
if you could have a conversation with her today, what would you talk about?
If I could have the conversation today, I'd have the same conversation that we would always have, but I just have it more. And that is, if there's anything on your mind, anything you want to talk about, come to us. Somewhere, somehow, in some way, we'll help you. We'll never judge you. There'll be a solution of some kind. I would say, talk to us more. Also, when it comes to suicidality, I think the lesson to be learned is always tell us, are you feeling, and psychologists ask their patients, are you feeling suicidal? And I think we have to go deeper than that. Are you suicidal today? Next step is, do you have a plan? By the way, what is your plan? And that is, like I said, hoping for the best but expecting the worst. What is your plan? I have no plan. But in the back of my mind, I think if you say to someone who has suicidal proclivity, just what's your plan? Oh, I don't have it. 6 hours later, what's your plan? I think if you ask it enough, maybe 6 days a week, they may crack. Maybe not everyone will crack, but maybe someone will crack and say, okay, I have a plan. This is my plan. Oh, let's talk about it. And never judge, which I did do, but I did a fair amount of judging. I'll admit that. But I would say to her, just come to. And we did tell her that, come to us anytime, and especially in the later years, anytime she did come to us, I was definitely non-judgmental, and we were trying to be helpful, try to be understanding. It was never ever perfect from my side. Talk to me. So many questions, like, after her final letter that she wrote to us, so many questions, let's talk about this, we don't have that, unfortunately, we don't have that opportunity. Just talk. And I'll say that to others, just talk.
Imagine, I was going to ask you, there are a lot of people, maybe you've seen this in the aftermath, maybe not, that are sort of going through this in silence, and they're not sure whether they should seek help, and they're trying to, whether it's the stigma or they're worried about actually validating these feelings that they're actually having and going ahead and seeking help. What would you tell these people to sort of push them over and say, like, go seek the help, don't worry about what people are going to think or say, or the stigma?
You talking about the patient themselves or the parents helping their kids?
If you can somehow, I guess, address both.
Okay, so you mentioned a very important word. That's validation. So I know in my daughter's case, and this is sometimes goes to a lot of the arguments we had, she wanted validation. She wanted to be validated that she's ill. If I would dismiss something, Yocheved, just, you're seeing a nutritionist, she's telling you this is what you have to eat, just eat, And that would be an invalidation of her disorder and the fact that, no, I can't do it for whatever reason. I have this underlying depression or so I would say that know it, recognize it, and seek the help that you have to, go to the ends of the earth to seek it. Problem is, a lot of times they don't recognize it, or they want to keep it secret because they want to have control over it. And it's their way of controlling their destiny. So, just get the help that you can and speak to people that you think can help you. If anyone wants to reach out to me, then feel free to do so. I'm happy to listen and give of what little advice I can. And just, don't be embarrassed. Just don't be embarrassed, Just, it's an important subject. We have to talk about it more and more. And hopefully those people that need the referral and those people that need the help they can get will get it.
Well, Avrami, thank you for sitting down with us. Thank you for being so open about your journey and just letting us know, Nachi and I, and I'm sure most of our listeners didn't get to meet Yocheved, but in many ways we're getting to meet her through all your postings and stories and writings, and it's really beautiful for you to share everything and help educate everyone. And is there anything else that you want to finish off that maybe we missed, or say something?
I think we've covered most of it. I'll just leave you with a very interesting story that she wrote. And I think when you texted me, you had touched on this, you had asked me a beautiful story about her. And she did not like going to shul. And religious communities, parents think that when a child doesn't want to go to shul, they think, oh, we have a child that's not religious, no connection to God, no interest in religion whatsoever. She wrote to us. She said the following thing. She said, I don't like going to shul. And the reason I don't like going to shul is because I feel such a strong spiritual connection to God that every time I walk into shul, I feel like I'm going to be overcome with such emotion that I'm going to have an emotional outburst, and I don't want to create a scene. So I avoid going to shul. And the lesson to be learned from that is, don't judge those that are displaying seemingly outward displays of, rebellious Frumkeit issues, when in fact we could be talking about special neshamas who just have difficulty in connecting, and those that are in the know could help them. Iris and Kalim, light into actual vessels to channel it in the correct way. It's not always a disconnect. Sometimes it's a very strong connection that is getting in the way. And so that's what I want to leave you with.
That's really beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Avremi Gourarie, for sitting down and opening up to us about your experience and letting us know a lot more about Yocheved in her life. Something I want to point out about Yocheved is there's so much to talk about her, but she's clearly a very heroic person, dealing with, I can't even imagine dealing with all the things that she had to deal with, but also being able to be open about it. It's uncomfortable to talk about it with anyone, especially family.
And she was someone who also helped friends and helped other people who were going through this.
Really. And I actually, when we were doing some research, there's a few of her friends that said, I want to talk to you. I didn't get a chance to talk to all of them, but I want to talk to you because I need to tell you what Yocheved did for me and how she helped out. That being said,
it's very important, if you are someone who is struggling with an eating disorder or really any disorder, mental health issues, that there are people who you can talk to. There are resources that can help you, and to certainly speak to the people around you who you trust, be it family, friends, a rabbinical authority, to reach out and find that help, because it is out there.
Yeah, and even if you're not sure, some people, sometimes it's hard to identify if they have an issue, but just talking it out with someone, so that's helpful. And if there's any message we could give, we usually plug ourselves and tell them to do this or that, but I think we're just gonna stick with this for this episode. But just, you should know that even though you're going through potentially you could be going through a very hard time, you're not alone. There is help, and there's people around you that love you and want to help you. And again, this episode is we hope should be an aliyah for Yocheved's neshama, and
we'll see you guys soon.
Ciao.